The sky over Genoa was a dull slate grey, the kind that threatened rain but never quite delivered. The streets were slick with the morning's damp chill, and the city was just beginning to stir. It was January 24th, 1979. Guido Rossa's breath curled in the air as he closed the door to his Fiat 850. From the corner of his eye, he caught a movement, a blur of figures approaching his car. Before he could react, the window shattered, and a pistol was thrust inside. A single shot to his arm first. Deliberate, controlled. Pain seared through him as he gasped, twisting in his seat. He knew what this was. Another shot. Then another. The final one to his chest. The three men, members of the Red Brigades, Riccardo Dura, Vincenzo Guagliardo, and Lorenzo Carpi, fled. The streets remained quiet. For a few agonizing minutes, Rossa clung to life, slumped in his car while his blood pooled on the seat. It would be his young daughter Sabina who would later discover the horror left behind. The murder of Guido Rossa sent shockwaves through Italy. His death was the beginning of the Red Brigade's downfall, as the labor unions and the Communist Party turned decisively against them, stripping them of their last shreds of legitimacy. But on that cold morning in Genoa, there was only the silence of an empty street, the distant hum of the waking city, and the still body of a working man. The Red Brigades emerged during a period of political and social unrest known as the Years of Lead, when Italy saw frequent violence from both far-left and far-right extremist groups. The Red Brigades saw themselves as the vanguard of a communist revolution, determined to dismantle the Italian state by force. Their tactics included kidnappings, assassinations, and bombings. Founded in 1970 by Renato Curcio, Margherita Cagol, and Alberto Franceschini, the group grew out of the radical student and workers' movements of the late 1960s. Drawing from Marxist and Maoist ideology, they believed in armed struggle as a means to dismantle the Italian state and establish a proletarian dictatorship. They viewed capitalism, the Italian government, and NATO as instruments of oppression that needed to be overthrown through direct action. In their early years, the Red Brigades focused on Italy's industrial centres like Milan and Turin, where factories became their battleground. They infiltrated workplaces, distributed propaganda, and stirred unrest. Strikes, sabotage, and acts of intimidation became their weapons. Their initial acts of violence were limited to vandalism, arson, and assaults against managers and company executives. They sought to undermine corporate power and portray themselves as defenders of the working class. By the mid-1970s, the group escalated its tactics to kidnappings for ransom, which funded their operations and allowed them to demand the release of imprisoned comrades. Soon after, the targeted assassinations begun. Business leaders were among their early victims, as the Red Brigades saw them as symbols of capitalist oppression. Law enforcement and judicial figures also became frequent targets, with police officers gunned down in ambushes. They were responsible for nearly 50 murders between 1974 and 1988. One of their most infamous acts was the 1978 kidnapping and murder of former Prime Minister Aldo Moro. The Red Brigades held him hostage for 55 days before killing him. Moro had been working on a compromise between Italy's Christian Democrats and the Italian Communist Party, which the Red Brigades saw as a betrayal of revolutionary ideals. His murder shocked the nation and was a turning point in the government's response to terrorism. In 1979, they killed Guido Rossa, a member of the Italian Communist Party and an active leader in the trade union. He worked at the Italsider steel plant and opposed the Red Brigade's attempts to infiltrate the labor movement. In 1978, he reported that a colleague was distributing Red Brigade's propaganda inside the factory. In retaliation, the Red Brigades decided to punish Rossa. Initially, they planned only to wound him as a warning, but the attack escalated. On the morning of January 24, 1979, they ambushed him near his car. Brigade member Riccardo Dura shot him, hitting him in the arm and then delivering a fatal shot to the chest. Ross's murder backfired on the Red Brigades. It outraged the Italian working class, including many left-wing activists who had previously been ambivalent about the group. His killing deepened public rejection of political violence and helped further isolate the Red Brigades from their potential base of support. The Italian authorities intensified efforts to dismantle the group, increasing surveillance, arrests, and infiltration. By the mid-1980s, internal divisions weakened the Red Brigades. Key leaders were arrested, and support for their violent methods declined. Splinter factions attempted to continue the movement, but they lacked cohesion and influence. By the early 1990s, the Red Brigades had largely disbanded,